All right, Steven, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
my
like,
pleasure.
yeah, like little bit I read about you. You seem to have an interesting story that I kind of wanted to dive in on, and what little I know about you, and just so we get the listeners a little bit of a background going on. That you started out trying to do a career in music, correct? And then,
Th- Yes,
yeah, then you spent, or you went on a 21-year adventure in India.
exactly. Yeah. I found out really quickly that the aspiring rock stars don't make any money. And and so I had to get a job, a job to pay my bills. I was in New York City. This is in the early 90s. And well, I was walking down the street one day and I looked up and I saw a sign that said wanted English teachers. And so I figured, I know English. How hard could that be, right?
Sure.
And so I thought, let me go for it. And I did. And I took this job. And within the first, it was teaching English to speakers of other languages. And within the first, like, 30 minutes or hour or so, it was like, oh my God, I know how to do this. This is what I was meant to do. Right. And I was 22 at the time, and it was this epiphany because I had these other aspirations and all these ideas in my head that, okay, I'm going to go into music, I'm going to be on the road, and I'm going to be doing this and that. And then suddenly it was just like it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, holy cow, this is what you're meant for. So yeah, that was like a big inspiration. And then from there, I was invited to go after continuing to teach for about a year. I was invited to go to India to open a school, and so
Nice.
that's what got me to India. Yeah.
So before, you said you were 22. So before all that, you just had aspirations of being a rock star. You had no idea
Oh
you
yeah.
were teaching or
Oh
doing.
yeah. It was so clear. All the plans. If you told me anything else at that time, like, oh, you're going to have a career in whatever, I would have been like, just get out of town. Forget about it. Not happening. I was so convinced. I was so sure.
Sure.
And that calling was just like, when you hear the voice from the sky, you're not a rock star, you're a teacher. um well, that really impacted me, I have to say. And I remember saying at the end of the class, I remember saying to myself, like, all the students, maybe there were about 15 kids in the class, and each one left the class and they were so happy and smiling and laughing. And I waved goodbye to them. And I said to myself, I could do this for the rest of my life. And voila, here I am. I'm now 55. And I've been doing it ever since then and continue to do so. And I still play music, by the way. I've got my keyboard right here on my desk in front of me. I have a little keyboard and I have one over there also. So every day I'm doing something musical. But the beauty of it is that I don't have to have the pressure of that to make my living. And I get to do it every single day. So I don't feel like I've lost anything. Even the only thing is that I might not be on the road and be playing out there and
Sure.
so on and so forth. But the joy that I get from educating and teaching absolutely satisfies me.
Yeah.
If that's all, if that's as good as it gets, if this is what I get to do every day, then I would die a really happy person.
That's so cool that you found that at 22 years old when it struck you like, hey, this is what I think that's what you said, 22,
Mm.
right? What this is what
Yeah,
I
I was
do
22.
the rest of my life. And
Yeah.
I feel like so many people. I mean, for example, I was at a cookout last week, and I'm 36 years old, and I have a couple of people I hang out with that are a little older than me. Then they're always making a joke like, "Well, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with my life." And
Hmm.
yeah, and part of me was just like, man, I always just thought that was just me, like still at this age, just still trying to figure out, what my passion was, or what do I want to do, or where do I see myself in 5 or 10 years. But it's more a lot of people. I don't know if I don't want to say they struggle with that, but they still, I guess, look for that. And it's so cool you found
Absolutely.
that early on.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I do a lot of workshops. I've done a lot of workshops over the years. And I would say and many of the workshops are centered around finding out who you are and then figuring out what would be the best way for you to apply your talents, your natural abilities to your work, your professional life, and otherwise. I would say the average age of an attendee of my workshops is about 45 to
Really?
48. Yeah. So these are people who've gone through most of their life, and it's usually after like most of their responsibilities are finished. Kids are either out of the house or reaching college, and suddenly they realize that, hey, wait a minute, this is David Byrne from the Talking Heads had a great song called "Once in a Lifetime," and it's sort of a about like a midlife crisis or realization, like, hey, wait, this is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. Those are two of the lines that are in there. So there's something to be said for people spending so much of the early part of their life with education and aspirations, and then you find out more than halfway through your life that this is not what you really wanted or what you were meant to do. And it's pretty tragic. It's pretty tragic because at that point in your life, you don't really have, in most cases, the tools or the wherewithal to be able to make those kind of change, or to make significant changes, to be able to do something that you really love. Sometimes it can come in as a hobby or as a part-time gig. So what makes me, at least, what gives me comfort is the fact that it doesn't have to be accidental. Like in my case, I consider myself really fortunate that I happened to have looked up when I was walking down a street in New York and I saw a sign that said wanted English teachers. Now, had I looked up to the other side and it said something like, wanted travel agents, I don't know. I don't know if my life would have taken the same direction. I imagine I would have found education anyway, but I don't know. Maybe it would have taken me 10 years or 15 years or 20, much longer to get there. And what I've discovered over the years is that it doesn't have to be an accidental discovery. You can be intentional to figure out what your innate abilities are and how they can line up with what it is that you do. There are ways of actually doing that. And that's not taught in the education system.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that I've talked about it a couple of times before on here, that, and so sorry folks if you're going to hear it again, but that the education system, I don't want to say they're dream killers, but they're more of a realist, I guess, and that if you say you want to grow up and be a amazing rock star, that they're like, no, you probably shouldn't look into that or whatever, and that you should actually just take the narrow path and go to college and then explore that and find out what you want to do. But then, like you were saying, people in your workshops are roughly 45 years old, and that people take that path and then they find out, 45 years old, that could be roughly, based on statistics, over half my life, and it's not, you start reflecting on it. It's like, oh, that's not what I wanted to do at all.
Yeah.
And that, the education system, I don't want to say it's terrible, but yeah, when kids or students or whatever you want to say that explore or want to say they have these big dreams of doing so, then why not let them, be a free thinker and let them go after it? Don't immediately shut it down just because it's not, the social norm of, or the straight line of success that some people would say, go to college, get married, have kids, live out your days, then go retire, then drink margaritas on the beach.
Yeah. Well, it's important to keep in mind that the existing education system is an anachronism. It's a throwback to a time back in the early 20th century when there was a movement toward efficiency, industrialization, and education was more of like a weeding out process. Like so many youth are going to go to college. Some are going to go into, general labor and things like that. And so the education system was meant specifically to filter rather than to genuinely help people find out who they were and what it is that they should do.
That's a good point.
And we're sort of stuck with that same educational paradigm. So it's like we've not left that, the structures and so on. We've tried, over the years as a society to improve that education system. So there are definitely improvements that have been made, but it's kind of like, let's just say you have a house or a building and it loses its purpose for whatever reason, and you want to reuse that house for something else later on. Like, for example, if you had a house and then you wanted to turn it into a restaurant, or you had a house and you wanted to turn it into a hotel or something like that. Well, you find that old structure doesn't really suit the new need. Right. And if you really want to have the structure that's going to lend itself to the ultimate purpose, you'd be better off making major changes or even wrecking it and then setting up something completely new. So we're kind of stuck with that paradigm. But I do want to say this, it's not a hopeless cause. It's still possible. And it's important to remember that there are certain types of people who do well in the current education system, the way it's set up. Those who are strong with mathematical ability, like logical intelligence. I call these tigers, natural abilities. You'll hear me refer to natural abilities as tigers. People who have a strong logical tiger, a strong linguistic tiger, a strong administrative tiger. Those are people who do extraordinarily well in the education system because they're organized, they're good with language, they're good with math, and most of the classes that you would take through the years are based on the standardized tests, whether it's the SATs, et cetera.
Yeah.
If you're strong in those areas and you do well, then you get into the top universities. And so there's a narrow channel for people who are naturally inclined in those areas to succeed. But those children who are not strong in those areas, naturally, they fight so much harder and the returns are so much less. Their abilities might be stronger in creativity, creative tiger, or they might be strong in healing. Like, what about that? What about those friends of yours when you grew up, the ones when you had a heartbreak, you would go to them to cry on their shoulder,
Yeah.
or they would be the sensitive ones who would be taking care of like animals, like stray animals or, animals in shelters. And even if they were in their teens and they were doing that, they were off the spectrum. Nobody thought about them. There was no value given to them or appreciation or accolades or trophies or grant or whatever. But yet the society needs healers, right? And
Yeah.
not just people who were really good with math and science and top their classes and then wind up becoming doctors and have no feeling for their patients. They're just there because it's a way for them to demonstrate their excellence in academia, but they hate what it is that they do. I've known many doctors over the years who felt like they were in prison. They hated being doctors, and who've changed careers as a result.
Was
Not
that
just that,
was
but
that just
in
because
so
you
many
think
years.
that that was a path that they were just led to, like their parents kind of pushed them to be a doctor?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that was not really what they wanted to do, but they just kind of did it just for,
Precisely.
yeah, and it just
Society set it up that way.
there
Like,
you go.
if
That's
you
what
become a doctor, it's prestigious. You'll make a lot of money. Every parent would say, "Oh my goodness, I would love for my child to be." So they got the praise from their parents, praise from their peers, and all of that sets off this chemical reaction in the brain of status.
sure.
Right? That's serotonin going off in the brain when you get status and you feel like, okay, hey, yeah, everybody's like looking at me as though I'm somebody. I'm somebody. I'm a somebody, and so you get addicted to that, and so you don't want to let it go. But meanwhile, inside there's that little voice saying like, this is not who you really are, and you suppress it,
Yeah.
and you suppress it until the point where it's like a caged tiger. There will be some other qualities inside of you, and those might be it could be as I said, like a visual and a creative tiger, that you want to do something artistic and produce something of visual beauty. Or in my case, it could be a musical tiger that wants to get out and perform like that. So there could be many other careers or many other directions that you could head that would actually feed your tigers. And I have a mantra. I say, feed your tigers before they eat you.
Mm, good. Just because you,
And
like
so,
you're saying, yeah, it would come like,
yeah,
yeah, they would eat you up inside because you keep them caged.
exactly.
And yeah.
Exactly. And there's a gentleman that I know in his 40s who did this. I'm using the example of a doctor in medicine, um, but there are many others. And he did just that. He went into medicine, and he's so revered in his area. But if you see him, he's like a basket case. He's completely falling apart. His life is a shambles.
Wow.
And so what's the benefit of having that Mercedes and, two houses and all of the prestige, and you're miserable? So for me, the most important thing is that you feed your tigers, you feed all of them. And it's true to say that it is possible for anybody to figure out what their tigers are and to figure out a way to get them all fed and to make a good living for yourself. And that's far more important than making a lot of money or having all of that prestige.
I would agree, just because, you said it was like a cultural narrative, or that's what society brings to you, that you have to have the big house with a family and dogs and kids and 2 cars and wearing a Rolex in order to be a success. And that's what I was always kind of grown up to think that's what it was. But everyone has their own version of success. And then I've learned that, well, am I healthy? Do I have friends? And,
Exactly.
when I go out to eat, am I worried about the bill? No. I mean, like, so that means a lot more to me than actually, I don't even wear a watch, but what I should ask, that, you keep saying, tigers, which you said is natural abilities. How did you come up with, that?
So one of the things that happened while I was in India, I had my school that was there, and the idea of my school was that every child was going to know who they were. That would be the center of the curriculum, not passing exams or getting scores on tests and things like that.
Sure.
But the central core of the curriculum was, who am I? And once the students could figure that out, then they would know where they were going to go in life, whether they'd become a chef or whether they would become an artist or whether they would become a doctor. It's not that I have anything against kids becoming doctors. In fact, one of the students who went through my approach wound up, while I was in India, became the #1 medical student in the country. Now,
Nice.
if you can imagine a country of like 3 billion people, she was the #1. I'm not going to say that it was only because of my method, but it had an impact because we were able to work with her to enable her to see where her tigers were, so to speak. And it was very much pointed in that direction. Anyway, so when I was trying to figure out that question, how do you determine what a child's natural abilities are so you could guide them? I looked at different models. There are different psychological frameworks to look at ability. And there are so many characteristics of the brain is hugely complex. It's like the most complex organ in the universe. And there are many ways to look at it, to, I'll say dissect it, but at least to describe it in different ways in terms of different abilities. So there's not any one model that will describe it perfectly. In the same way, like if you went to a hospital, there's not one instrument that you could measure things with, right? Like there's not one, you've got a X-ray machine and an EKG and an EEG and an MRI. And,
right.
There's so many different instruments that could let you look inside. You use different instruments based on what it is that you're trying to figure out. So in the same way, when we look at the brain and we look at behaviors, there are many different ways to describe it. So one of the ways that was appealing to me was Howard Gardner's model of multiple intelligences, which is that there are, depending upon how you look at it, Gardner came up with 8 different ways to look at not that there's one thing called intelligence, but there are many kind of intelligences. So he said it's not how smart you are, it's how you are smart. In other words, you could be smart with your body, like in athletics. You could be smart with music. You could be smart with nature and animals. You could really connect with them, and you've seen that before. There's some people who we've seen movies like the Horse Whisperer, right? People who've got this deep connection to the environment or animals. Steve Irwin, the late great Steve Irwin, Crocodile.
Crocodile Hunter.
Right. So there's some people who have I call them tigers, right? These natural abilities in self-reflection or in people, right? There are some people who, they might not have been, quote unquote, the brightest in the class, but they were the most social.
Sure.
And then what happens as soon as everybody graduates and companies are hiring, one of the first things they ask for is, we need somebody who's got great people skills and social skills and interpersonal skills and communication skills. And that's what nobody ever taught that really. But those are the people, when they go to interviews, they're the ones who probably grab the majority of the jobs because they speak so well, right? So I liked that framework that he set out because it spoke to me. It demonstrated that this is one way to look at qualities through intelligences, right? And logical, I mentioned before, linguistic, those are also two tigers that are part of this framework. So that was one thing that I liked and I utilized to help define and describe which one of my tigers is bigger. You've got all of them, but some are going to be more prodigious than others.
That makes sense. And when you find all these tigers in people, is that kind of where, are most people aware of these tigers, or do you feel like they're not aware of them? And this is where you explore with them to like, hey, you have the creative tiger, or do people just kind of go along the planet or their life, and they want to be creative and it's coming out of them, but they just don't know how to get it out of them, the creativity part of it, if that's what we're using for example. Does that kind of make sense what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Well, there are two parts to what you're addressing. The first is, are people aware of them? And the answer is some are and some aren't, and then to different degrees. And you can see this also in things like language. To what degree are people who use language aware of grammar? Now, some people are highly aware of grammar. They've studied it. They really understand the nuances of it. Other people are not so much. And then some people kind of grab it and do it and, get along with it naturally. So if you do know the rules of grammar, you have more control over the language. And the same would be true for music. To what degree does a musician know music theory? And you'll find many musicians who say, hey, listen, I can't read music and I don't know about it. I play by ear. So they have a natural ability. But there's one thing that's for sure. The more that you know about theory, the more control you can have and the greater freedom you have to express yourself. Okay. So in the same way, with respect to your tigers, people, yourself, how you feel about things. It's kind of like if you play music, you have a feeling kind of like for the music, even if you don't know what it means or what you're doing. But the more you know about them specifically, the more control it gives you to be able to apply them effectively, to make decisions for your future. You can anticipate changes and things that are going to happen, and you can be more free and intentional and successful, I would say, in applying yourself. You'll understand what's going on. And I'll give you an example to demonstrate. Let's just say, now there were some intelligences that we looked at, Gardner's model. I have another model, the second one, with some of the other qualities you were just mentioning, like a creative tiger. That's a separate set of qualities. Okay. But I call them all tigers. So let's just say that you have a really big creative tiger. And this tiger needs to eat. It needs to do creative things. And you know that, right? And you know that. So what happens is that you either look for a career where you can express your creativity, or if the job you have is not one that lends itself to creativity or doesn't provide that tiger the opportunity to eat, then what you do is you look for alternative routes to feed the tiger. You think that, okay, I can't do my creative work in my day-to-day job, but I can do a gig on the side. Maybe I do some freelance work where I do creative work, and it could be creative connected to visual things like visual graphics or art, or I do something, make some things and sell them on Etsy, or maybe you do some creative things related to creative writing. You could be writing a book, or you could do a script or whatever it might be. So you find that outlet, and that could be a gig, or it could also be like a hobby or leisure activity, something you just do for fun to feed the tiger, just to keep it. And that's how music is for me. I don't make any money doing it, right? But I know that I have to feed that. And where this comes into play, like why this is so important, is that I recognize my tells when my tiger is getting hungry and I'm getting frustrated. Like when I suddenly see myself, like I'm doing some sort of work and there's something itching inside of me, I'm like, ugh. There's something like eating away at me. Like, as I said, if you don't feed your tigers, they eat you. There's something eating away. I can figure it out really quickly that I have to do something musical. Stop your work and play music for 20 minutes right now. Just stop it and play some music. And suddenly it's like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I playing this? And I get into it. And within a couple of minutes, I'm transformed. I'm in a different world. And all my neurons are firing in my head and I'm getting a buzz. It's like I just took a double espresso shot, or I'm so on fire and I have my energy back, and then I can stop and I can get back to work and I'm buzzing again. I fed it. I took care of it. And it's kind of like I see this with my wife and my daughter. My daughter's 2 years old, right? Both of them have one thing in common, which is in terms of um, anger and being hungry physically, right? I know that my wife has a really strong appetite, and if she doesn't eat like at particular times, she starts to get angry, right?
Uh-huh.
And I see it also with my daughter. When my daughter starts getting really cranky and she's crying for like no reason, it's like, oh, she's hungry. And then I give her a bottle or give her something to eat, and she's like back to her normal self again. So it's the same thing. Your tigers need to eat. And so coming back to the question before, if you can identify them and you know what they are, it gives you the advantage of being able to be intentional, to take care and to feed them so you don't get constantly disrupted. And where this impacts you is if you don't realize that, then you get these bouts of frustration. And if you don't feed, and I identify 19 tigers, if you don't take care of them, it comes out sideways. Like you'll start getting angry, or you'll do something like try to suppress the hunger of the tigers. And you could do that. You could do that by having a second or third cup of coffee, or by eating something really sweet, a couple bars of chocolate. I don't know, whatever. Like when you're in your bout of frustration, you might overeat, you might smoke, you might stimulate, right? You could do something with diversion. So the next thing you know, like you look up and you realize that you've been watching like really silly cat videos for the last hour on TikTok, or, something weird on YouTube. You're like, oh my God, where was I for the last hour? Yeah. You've just found an alternative way to tranquilize those tigers. Or go shopping. I call that retail therapy. You go, you're on Amazon, you're buying stuff that you absolutely don't need. I have some person that I know who he's got this thing for knives. When he's frustrated, he goes and he buys another knife that he doesn't need, and it impacts him financially.
Yeah,
and
a
so
lot of people
all of
don't
these
realize
methods
how much that does impact you. Oh, sorry. Yeah, a lot of people probably don't realize how much that does impact somebody. Like as far as if you go shopping, if you go buy knives when you get frustrated, if you go smoke, you're just leading yourself down to a negative behavioral loop and causing more issues for yourself.
Exactly. I view it, if you think about it, as like a sort of like a curve that's like a hump. So like at the beginning, as you eat one bar of chocolate, it goes up. The second bar, when it gets to like the third one, it starts to go down again. Or you smoke one cigarette, two cigarettes, it's going up, 3, 4, 5, then it starts to go down. You start to feel really, really gross about yourself. And the same is for any other thing. You buy one knife, two knife, or one pair of shoes, two pairs of shoes. By the time you're buying 6 pairs of shoes, that graph starts going down. So here, what I want to say is that these methods of stimulating yourself are not sustainable.
Correct.
None of them. And most people that I've seen, they live their lives going from one false method of stimulation to the next. They go from a coffee to something sugary to some sort of diversion and their work is sort of like going on in the background. Like they kind of do the minimum that they have to do in order to keep stimulating themselves side by side to get through the day or the week or the weekend.
Yeah. They're just kind of looking for the next best thing to keep them going, right? Yeah. So it's like one cup of coffee, like, oh, I have another one. Oh, I have another one. Yeah. Or like, oh no, if coffee ain't doing it anymore, you find, like you said,
exactly.
Smoking. Yeah.
And I'm not against coffee. I drink coffee. I'm not against chocolate. I eat chocolate, but I don't use it as a crutch to get me through the entire day.
Exactly.
My work has to stimulate me, because work for me, and I guess for most people, is like an 8-hour affair, or it could be a little bit more, a little bit less, but it's a large chunk of my day. So, and the interesting thing I was mentioning before is what's going on in the brain at this time. When I do something that I get pleasure from, there's the the reward center of our brains. When you see an opportunity and you say, let me try doing that, and you do it and you succeed at it, you get a feeling of happiness. Or that's a release of dopamine in the brain.
Sure.
And then what happens is, as you keep doing that, you look forward to doing it the next time. And then there's that positive feedback loop, that virtuous cycle. The more you do it, the more pleasure you get. You set up bigger challenges for yourself, and you can, because you've got a big tiger there, so it's easy for you to do that, and you get returns on your investment, and it keeps going like that. And so the same chemicals are released in your brain when you eat chocolate or you eat sugar or you smoke or et cetera. So what's going on is that when we say the tiger's not eating and it's getting frustrated, what it means is that there's a blockage of energy, or chemically speaking, there's a inhibition of the release of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, what are called your happy chemicals. So Bruning has a book out called, I think it's called Your Happy Chemicals, which speaks about this. So you can, I'm forgetting her first name, but her last name is Bruning. You can get the same exact hit as you would from cigarettes or from drugs or from alcohol or from, whatever, from doing work that you really love and that stimulates. And you've experienced this before. Everybody's experienced that before, when they've been in a flow state, when you've done something that you're really good at and that you're enjoying, whether it's sports or whether it's art or
yeah, just any of it, man. I mean, yeah, you can feel. I mean, what is it? When you're running, it's kind of like the runner's high. I've never really experienced that, but a lot of people have told me they have, and so I kind of want to try that. But yeah, you can, exactly what you said. You get into that certain state, like if you're playing music and you just feel everything's coming together. And it's like that one perfect moment, and you're in the zone, and you don't even know why
in
it's
the
happening.
zone, in the groove.
Yeah, you don't even know why it's happening or what's changed or what's different, but you just know it's something magical happening.
Yeah. That's a pinnacle. That part is a peak when you really get into what's called a flow state. That's something which is extraordinary. And I would say this, that it's an ideal. It's hard to be in flow state where you're always at that level. If you were talking sexually speaking, that would be like an orgasmic state, right? So you can't be in that state for like hours and hours on at a time. But there is also what I might say more like the romantic state, or the love. You can be in love, and that's very much true about your tigers and your work when they are aligned with what you're doing. So you are in almost like that state of love. And being in a state of love is it's not like intense romance every single moment, but you've got this general feeling of everything's okay and I feel good about my relationship. And although you can have challenges, and look, I'm going to guess that most people have had an experience of love and some kind of a relationship. Sure. You are going to have times where it gets a little bit frustrating or it gets difficult, but if it's the right relationship and it's true love and it's deep love, you weather those challenges and you spend more time in the good parts of the relationship. And so work becomes like that you're in a state of love with what it is that you do, and you wind up getting to those higher states or those more intense states of deep love or deep romance or deep intimacy. And that's what goes on when your tigers are aligned with what it is that you do. And that's why when you see people who are in love, why most of the time they're pretty jolly. They've got a glow on their face. And the same is so if you see people whose tigers are aligned with their work, they tend to be pretty happy people most of the time. And it's not the majority of people, but it could be.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, a lot of people, like we were kind of talking about earlier, they found their way into a certain life path, life experience, whatever you want to call it. And they kept going down this road, not asking questions. And all of a sudden 5-10 years went by. Then all of a sudden they don't know what happened, and they never found their true passion. And then, when you find people, for example, who wanted to grow up and be an actor or a comedian or a famous basketball player, whatever you want to say. But those type of, everyone's got problems, but those type of people are doing what they actually love to do.
Right.
And, yeah. And a lot of people, just because of bad situations, life didn't go their way, bad luck, I don't know, whatever you want to say, but they never really, even with the work or whatever, like you said, when the challenges came around, they pushed it aside and they didn't decide to keep pursuing it. They just took the easy road home, or easy road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And if you see people like the ones that you've mentioned, whether they're some of the more um, visible professionals, people who are in the limelight in one way or another, whether they're professional, they're an actor or a professional sports person, they love what they do as well. And we don't see them in their off hours when they're up at 4 a.m. going out to practice and to memorize all of their lines and the effort that they make. And so what happens is that sometimes people look at such professionals and they say, I want that because that person's famous, that person's rich, and they are aspiring not to what the person is doing, but to the outcome or the success factors that that person is demonstrating. That's what they want, because when you give them the opportunity to do that type of work, when it comes to the work and they've got to do all of the practice, suddenly it's not so appealing to them. And that's largely because in most cases, their tigers are not aligned with that kind of work. So when they do that work, they're not getting the pleasure while they're doing it. And so when they're not getting pleasure while they're doing it, dopamine is not getting released. So they either avoid it or they try to mask it. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to do something else. And so they want something, but they don't have the actual capacity or the innate abilities to be able to do that.
Well, you're the CEO of what is it, MNI, whatever?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so Multiple Natures International is
Okay.
a
Yeah.
company that I founded to help people to get aligned with them, to know their tigers and to get them aligned with what
But
they
yeah,
do.
I mean, going along with what you said, that there was probably a lot of work actually starting that, multiple natures. I mean, you
Yeah.
could easily just sat around and just said, "Oh, I hope it happens one day," just like you were saying. But it's not going to happen without you doing some type of work, right? And
Oh
some type of,
gosh.
yeah, and like all the hours you're putting in, even like I would assume, like based on what you said, you probably were getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, and working late just to take care of certain situations in order to get this project, this passion, this thing that you wanted to do
Yeah.
off the ground.
I mean, Chris, let's come back to love, right? When you're really in love with somebody, like deeply in love with them, you're thinking about them all the time.
Yeah,
Right. You
I
think
would agree.
you wake up and you're thinking about them, and you go to sleep thinking about us, and maybe you might dream about them. You're traveling, whatever it is, you're always thinking about them. And for me, it's very much the same way. Like, I'm constantly thinking about how I can help people to get more aligned. And sometimes I come up with new ways of doing that. Like I make software that helps us to figure out people's abilities. And I start thinking about the interface, and I start thinking, what about that button over there? And it's not in the best place. And so my brain is constantly scanning for ways to do that. And then I go in and I get it fixed and I try it out and it's made an improvement. And so, yeah, if there's been any growth or success, there's hard work behind it, but and you could even say so the same thing that's in a relationship. Like people say, if you want a successful relationship, you have to work at it.
Sure.
But you don't mind working hard at something that you love because you get results when you put in effort, and the results are worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's what they say. If you find something you truly love in life, you don't really work a day in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. There's a wonderful quote from the Tao Te Ching where Lao Tzu's there are these what are called koans, Koan, and a koan are these statements that are somehow there's like a contradiction within the statement, and it says the masters get the job done without lifting a finger.
Interesting.
So it's like, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, you get the work done, but you don't do anything. So it's like, so if you go a little bit deeper behind that, what it means is that if you're into something and you become good at it and you love it, you've got that natural propensity for it. So when you do that work, it's somewhat effortless.
Hmm. Yeah.
And therefore, like, for example, if my business partner says to me, I need a letter crafted that does something like this. So that's really easy for me to do things. Like I'll knock a letter off like that in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
And if he were to do it, it would take him like 2 hours and he'd be going back and forth and it wouldn't be great.
Sure.
At the same time, his logical tiger is like incredibly powerful. So if he's got to come up with like a subscription model or something like that with how much something costs, and if you go for the bronze category or the silver category, what it would be and what you would get. So he would knock that off in a really short period of time. That would be effortless for him. So that's really what's important.
If somebody wanted, all right. So speaking of that, if he couldn't do the letter, like you were saying, would you want somebody, like you were saying, to kind of feed that tiger or to help it grow, get better at it, get better at that skill, get better at that ability?
So it's something like this that in in a day of work, there are different tasks that anybody has to do,
Sure.
and some things will be with communications, some might be with organizing files, it might be with um, creating budgets, or so depending upon what work. You could be editing if you're doing a podcast. Depending upon what your job is, you're going to have different tasks. And not every task is going to align perfectly with your tigers.
I agree.
So there you have to make the choice of whether you're going to push through it. So that's the work, right? The work is really those aspects of your job that don't necessarily align with who you are. And you need to make a choice. Either you can push through them, or you could delegate them to somebody else, or you could find other ways of doing it. Like you find times of the day where you've got more energy, right? Don't do it at the end of the day on Friday. Maybe do it first thing in the morning, like on a Wednesday when you've got some energy or something like that. So there are you could use technology to help you. So there are tools that might be able to assist you in automating things. There are many ways to deal with it, but the point is that how do you know what I'm not sure exactly what your question is, if it's something like this, but like, what do you do when there's certain work that appeals to you or when it doesn't appeal to you? And the first thing is to know what aligns with you and what doesn't, and whether or not it's worth it for you just to put up with it, or whether you should be delegating it.
Ooh. Yeah, I guess, yeah, that was kind of what I was trying to get, that, once you're aware that you're not good at something and it's almost a weakness, that it's like, ooh, I need to probably get better at this in some fashion, even though that Steven can do it faster than I can, but I would still, what if Steven wasn't around one day and I needed to get this done? Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was asking, that I should actually sit down and try to make myself learn this to some extent.
What you're saying is right, and not everybody gets it that way. I should be able to do it to a certain extent. There are some people who have this thing that's like, I'm going to turn this weakness into a strength, and that's like one of the biggest tragedies, because there's a lot of ego involved there. If Frank can do it, I can do it.
Sure.
We grew up together. He's not any better than I am. Like, I'm going to show him that I could be so that's where most people get themselves into a deep ton of doo-doo, because they set themselves up for failure. Your natural abilities aren't aligned with that kind of work. And so the effort and reward does not come back to you. You work really hard and you get a little bit of effort, a little bit of progress. You work really hard, big effort, and you get a little bit of progress. And that's really not going to change over time. You might get a little bit better at it, but it's never going to be like the person who's naturally inclined, because if that person puts in a little effort, they get back a huge return. It's just so easy for them. So being good enough in those situations is the best way to treat it, as opposed to, I'm going to become the best, blah, 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 when that's not your natural ability.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I wonder that, again, going on a cultural narrative or society, that, in college, we were taught, doing mock interviews, we were given the question, how do you turn a weakness into a strength? So it was always kind of like, oh, I got to say something very, I don't want to say egotistical, but kind of similar to what you were saying. It's like, oh, like a regular textbook, I don't know, answer. And then that's what was rehearsed, but it was never anything that I actually truly meant. and that it's
Yeah.
almost kind of a lot at times, right?
I actually have trouble with the premise, and I'll explain why. This is a really interesting example.
Okay.
I, if you take a look at chess pieces, and if you were to say, like, which are the stronger pieces or which are the weaker pieces, right? You might say, oh, well, the queen is the strongest piece and the pawn is the weakest piece.
Right.
Well, a pawn can be absolutely devastating.
If you place
And
correctly, right?
it depends how you use them. And a queen could be trapped and totally useless. So it's not the piece itself, in my mind, that's strong or weak. It's the situation. And now I'm going to talk about it in terms of like a career or profession.
Yeah.
There's an example that I love to give, which is if you think about somebody who's like who works at the airport, and they do the security bag check when it goes through the X-ray machine, right? And so they're there and they're watching all these bags passing through. And there's something I call protective tiger and also a visual tiger. So if the protective is really strong, that they have this tendency to prevent harm, loss, like mistakes. So they're going to be there at that bag and they're going to be loving what they do. They're protecting, right?
Yeah.
And the other is this visual tiger, that their eyes are scanning, that they have really powerful capacity to spot things visually. So those two tigers together team up and become like this dynamic duo. At the same time, if this person has a really powerful entertaining tiger that they love to joke around and make people laugh, and their interpersonal tiger is also a big one, that they love people and they love to make people laugh and joke around. So those big tigers of entertaining and interpersonal will be an absolute liability for this person. They will be, quote unquote, a weakness in this situation. At the same time, if you were to take those two qualities, entertaining and interpersonal, and you had someone who was someone who does marketing or sales, or who does podcast interviewing or hosting, right?
Yeah.
Or acting, it would be an asset. So, and I'll give the opposite example. If you have somebody who does like database maintenance, they have to maintain like a very elaborate database for a company where there are like, thousands or millions of records. If that person has a small interpersonal tiger, they don't love to interact much with people. Well, guess what? It's an asset. It's not a liability. It's not like, oh, I'm so introverted and I hate it. And it's a weakness. I have to change no. In this situation, guess what? It's a strength because you're not tempted to go out and talk to everybody and you're really happy being by yourself.
So it's a matter of just figuring it out, and like you said, just kind of placing it in certain positions and getting the most out of it.
Yeah, you have to know which whatever pieces you have. In most cases, there's a game you can play successfully. If you want to say play to win, or you can play a successful game in life with whatever pieces you have. It's just playing to your particular set of tigers or your set of pieces, so to speak.
I like your examples that you've been using this podcast and like kind of almost making it more simplified. And, it really helps me understand more things, especially, in certain, I guess, way I explain things. I always feel like I'm pretty vague but when you put it into like, using it as a chess piece, like, oh, that makes sense, but do you kind of, what am I trying to ask here? Do you feel yourself like, by yourself thinking a lot and, I guess, thinking a lot, putting your thoughts down on paper and explaining how you wanted to get it portrayed out to your clients and things like that. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, well, this is a tiger in action. That's my educative tiger. There's one tiger, which is an educative tiger. I told, like, from the beginning when I told you, like, I discovered teaching.
Sure.
So it's no mistake. I had this educative tiger that I didn't even know it existed. It was there the whole time. And just suddenly it's like, oh my goodness. And one of the qualities of a strong educative tiger is to be able to understand something and help somebody understand that concept.
Yeah. Yeah.
And part of that is coming up with good examples and analogies.
Mm-hmm.
So something that you just mentioned now, and people have told me over time that I have a way of being able to take complex things and putting them into simple ways that are easy and fun to. There's also my creative tiger in there as well. Easy, memorable ways. So I talk about tigers. And there are other analogies that I use. And so, okay, that's what comes from a big educative tiger.
Yeah.
Do I write them down? Yeah, of course. I write them down. I talk about them. I have videos on them. Put some of the stuff in my podcast about them. My podcast is called Feed Your Tigers. So
Yeah, that's just one thing that I was, as we were talking, I was like, yeah, people like simplified stuff, and in my perspective, and that, they start reading a book or listen to somebody say it in a completely scientific way and not in layman's terms, and they immediately get turned off by it, and they're instantly just shut down by it. Well, I don't want to learn this anymore. So yeah, when you can explain things like the way you're explaining to them, it's like, oh yeah, okay, now I can do this. You set them up for success to a certain point.
it's interesting because we are creatures of symbols, right? If you take a look, and in our anthropology, if you take a look at us historically, we codify things. We take ideas and turn them into symbols to represent what it is that we mean, whether they're religious symbols or whether they are mathematical symbols or whether they are, any other type of symbols. And we are also creatures of stories and storytelling
Uh-huh.
and characters, and we are creatures of meaning. So we find ways to take ideas and to convert them into symbols or characters, and to make meaning out of them and to put them into stories. And so, for example, when I did that with the idea of the tigers, I saw how powerful that was for people. Like instantly, as soon as when I talk to people, and before I had the tigers, it's interesting. Before I had the symbol of the tigers, I used to talk about these in terms of multiple intelligences and multiple natures, which is the model that I created. And as you were rightly saying, some people sometimes turn off around it because it's a little bit technical and it's a little jargony. So unless you're really interested in that kind of stuff, you might turn off, you might tune out. But the minute I speak to somebody and they say, okay, what is it that you do? I say, I help people identify their tigers and to feed them. And they're like, what? And I even sometimes ask, do you know what I mean by that? And you'd be surprised just by saying feed your tigers before they eat you. Most people will be able to come close to explaining what that means in a single line.
Yep.
And so I think it's very important to be able to do that if you want to communicate things to other people. That's where you get great book titles. People who've got great book titles or ideas that they can put into an analogy like that. That's why they stick, just because it creates meaning, and these symbols pack a lot of meaning inside of them, and then it becomes fun to unpack them.
Yeah. This might be a stupid question, but do you think that, or do you know that, can people fear their tigers or abilities?
I would say people would fear them only if they didn't really understand them or
So
understand what they could do with them, or how they could use them effectively.
yeah, because I guess what I'm getting at is that I've noticed that some people, I've read and seen that people are kind of scared of success. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you an area where I think that it happens. It's rare. I don't think most people face this, but it does happen. There are some people who have tigers that are so powerful, that are so massive, um, that whatever it is that they do, it succeeds. So if it's a musical tiger, you've seen musicians who just they're like, I don't know, Jimi Hendrix. Let's just take somebody.
Sure.
It's like if you put a guitar in their hands, even though they didn't even learn theory or something like that, they just go to the absolute limit. And everything they do, people are fawning. People are like, oh my God, it's the greatest thing. And to them, it's just like, what did I do? I just like, touched the guitar string and I like wiggled my finger like that, and people are freaking out. And the challenge here is there's less of an incentive to work. This is an interesting thing. There's less of an incentive to work hard, because just by doing almost nothing, they're getting back accolades. They're getting a huge amount of praise, and so what can happen to people like that, whether they're actors or whether they're musicians or whether they are, it could be anything. What happens is that they are they're they don't necessarily become disciplined and set up their own challenges, because they would have to set up challenges, because most of us have to deal with challenges that the world sets out for us. But when we're in a situation where we're so qualified at something that the world is saying everything you're doing is amazing, so then it's only that person, practically speaking, who could set up something for themselves which is so challenging that they would be able to keep themselves on that continued path of growth. And that's why I believe there are many people who burn out,
Mm.
or who either commit suicide, or who they just overindulge, right, in drugs or something like that, because they don't know how to discipline their massive tigers.
Mhm.
So that, in those cases, I guess you could say some people could even be fearful of their abilities. There was one I did experience this. I met the wife of a very famous rock musician who died of an overdose, and she said something of the same about him, that he couldn't handle the power that came along with his talent. It was just too much for him. I don't know if that he was, in that case, he was afraid of his talent as much as that he couldn't manage it. He couldn't handle it.
Just afraid you're just gonna handle maybe the publicity and all the fame.
Yeah, the fame and people just
Yeah,
like
some people
contacting him and say, "Oh, you're the greatest," and he's just like, "I'm just me, man. I don't know what's going on."
yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if our brain, I guess, yeah, if our brains were evolved to handle that type of fame. Because when we were talking about storytelling, I mean, sometimes I wonder where the digital age of storytelling has kind of gone away. But now that podcasts have emerged and become one of the most popular things, that people are able to come on here and tell stories and talk about anything they want to. But yeah, just I wonder that, with the information that we get now as far as cell phones, Netflix, news, podcasts, that if our brains are just not wired to handle these types of information, or this types of to be seen 24/7, I mean, without, obviously there is good things about it, but without, with this technology, you and I were able to have this conversation today, but are people just, yes, not all people were able to be able to handle it, I guess, in a certain way.
I do think overexposure puts us in really weird situations, of having to either perform or having to make really trivial things seem more meaningful and intense than they actually are. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean, just depending on how you word it, but depending how, people perceive it, that things can be completely polarizations of what you really intended it to be. For example, that musician, and even, podcasts or anything, that the negativity that comes with it of being on the top of your game, that, majority, my 60%, 70% of people are probably going to enjoy the type of music you're making, but there's also going to be that 30% who don't like it, and they don't mind expressing their opinion, especially when they're a keyboard warrior. And that, I don't think a lot of people, when they get attracted to that negativity, and they can't handle it. And, no, because everyone wants to be, liked and do well and, make great things. But, there's always a couple people who are not going to enjoy your work, and they're going to make sure that they tell you about it in weird ways. And that it's almost like a trap, that you get locked in that negativity, and that's all you want to keep looking at, because you're trying to, and also I guess could be used as motivation, but you're also trying to, not look at that negativity, but it feeds, because people, it's so attracting for whatever reason.
yeah. There's an interesting concept that touches on this. And it's one of the things that I discovered while I was in India. I had a very good friend while I was there who is a scholar of Sanskrit, and he was able to translate many of these ancient documents, some of them like 5,000 years old,
Nice.
and to help me understand what the ancients had to say about personal development and growth and the fulfillment of one's potential. And there's one concept that struck me, and it's this word called swasta. And the word swasta has two parts, swa and sta. So swa means self, and sta, S-T-H-A, sta, means to be situated in. So swa, sta means to be situated in oneself.
Okay.
And what's interesting is that the literal meaning of the word swasta is to be healthy. And what's interesting about that is what's implied here is that when you are situated in yourself, you are healthy. When you're grounded in yourself, you are healthy.
Sure.
Health is not your body mass index. It's not your cholesterol level. It's not your, the sugar level and so on. Because when you're centered in yourself, that's when and what I mean by that is, your tigers and you're feeding them. That's what I mean by when you're centered in yourself. So when you are in that place or in that position, these kind of troubles or the chaos, or as you were mentioning, the criticism that might come from outside, it doesn't knock you off your balance because you're centered in yourself. You know what you are, you know where your qualities lie. And so that to me is a very powerful word and a meaning, and like a North Star for me, that this is what's important in life, is for me to know what my tigers are and to feed them and be centered here, because there are always going to be, the haters are always going to be there.
Yeah.
And there are always going to be situations in life that are going to come and bring chaos to you. Somebody's going to might die in your family or in your business world, whatever it might be. There will be pandemics. There are going to be recessions. There are going to be shootings. There, so many things are going to be chaotic in life because that's how life is. But the greater the degree to which I am centered in myself, well, the less I'm going to be knocked off kilter when those issues do come up. It's always going to hurt when somebody says something awful about you,
Sure.
but it's not going to hurt as bad when you're centered.
Stephen, I think we should take it home on that right there. That's a good way to end
Okay.
this. Yeah,
All
it's
right.
not hurt as bad when you're centered, and I like that. So,
Yeah.
if people want to find you or you want to plug away any of your stuff, feel free to do all that right now.
Sure, thanks. If you want to find me, feedyourtigers.com. That's it. If you go there, you can find out about the 19 tigers. I have an assessment online. If you would like to do it, you can find out which tigers are the big ones and the medium and the small ones, and there are even reports that'll tell you which career path or career direction you would might be best for you. And if there's anybody who's even interested in doing this kind of thing, I have a course where you could become a practitioner, and you could bring tigers to other people. So if you're healing and educative tigers are big ones, this might be a path that you could take. So that's pretty much, you'll find me there.
Cool. Stephen, thanks for being here.
Okay. Chris, it was fun and I enjoyed speaking with you. So thanks for having me.
Great. Okay, everybody. Good night.